Most Americans believe their history begins with a land bridge, a few scattered tribes, and the arrival of European sails on the horizon. But every few centuries, something slips through the cracks of time. An object buried too deep, a map too accurate, a ruin too advanced, a diary written by someone who should not have existed. And when these pieces come together, they tell a story so vast and so impossible that it threatens to rewrite everything. This story begins not with Columbus, nor with the first peoples who crossed into the continent, but with an earthquake in 1906, when the ground beneath San Francisco split open and exposed a stone chamber that no archaeologist dared speak of publicly. Inside that chamber was a manuscript, written in a language unknown, bound in metals no American forge could reproduce, and dated to 11,200 years before the United States was born. The government sealed the discovery, but the manuscript did not stay silent. At 5:12 a.m. on April 18, 1906, the city still slept under a pale dawn sky. Streetcars were still, horses rested, fishermen along the bay were preparing nets for the day's catch. And then the world cracked. Buildings twisted as if the earth were exhaling centuries of secrets. Streets buckled like soft clay. The city filled with a roar so deep it felt like the voice of the planet itself. But beneath the rubble, beneath the screams and dust, something else had awakened. A narrow fissure in the Mission District exposed something impossible. A staircase, carved with mathematical precision, descending into darkness. 2 firefighters were the first to spot it. They climbed down with lanterns, expecting perhaps a forgotten basement. Instead, they found an entrance sealed by a circular stone door, perfectly smooth, flawless, resistant to every tool they tried. Until the second aftershock struck, the door split open. Warm air, impossibly warm for a sealed room, spilled out like a breath from the distant past. Inside lay a vaulted chamber filled with murals, cities unlike any recorded in American archaeology, golden towers with geometric precision, airships carved into stone long before human flight, and coastlines that belonged to a different Earth. And at the center, a pedestal. On it rested a manuscript, hundreds of pages, metal-bound, resilient, untouched by time. But the most shocking part? The pages were written in perfect English, not modern English, but an English from far beyond the English anyone had ever known. Dr. Eleanor Whitfield, a Harvard linguist, was secretly invited to San Francisco 3 weeks after the quake. The U.S. Geological Survey and War Department escorted her into the chamber under strict orders. She was never to speak of what she saw. She was 41 years old, brilliant, outspoken, and one of the few women in her field. She recognized certain letters on the manuscript, shapes that resembled Old English, Phoenician, and something older still. She spent the next 3 years decoding the first page, only the first page. And when she decoded it, the government immediately classified the manuscript deeper than any document since, because it read, "This record is written for the last America, not the first." And so began the unraveling. The manuscript told the story of an ancient super-civilization that once covered the entire continent 12,000 years ago, a civilization erased by a continent-wide catastrophe and hidden intentionally to prevent future misuse. They called themselves the First Republic of the Western Sun. According to the manuscript, they had complex governance, maritime trade routes, astronomers capable of predicting cosmic cycles, and a mysterious technology known only as resonance engines, devices that could convert natural frequencies into immense power. Their capital city, Aurelon, stood somewhere beneath what is now Nevada. And according to the final pages Eleanor translated, Aurelon did not fall by natural disaster alone. It fell by human choice. A separate thread of the manuscript referenced a remote mountain range where survivors stored the last beacon of the Republic. In 1924, a Lakota hunter named Chayton Elks Running stumbled upon a metallic monolith while tracking elk through the Black Hills of South Dakota. It wasn't stone, it wasn't wood, it wasn't any metal known. It hummed, quietly, steadily, like a heartbeat. The government learned of it within weeks. The monolith was removed. Chayton was interrogated. The site was sealed, but not before he saw the carvings at its base, symbols identical to those in the San Francisco manuscript, and one chilling sentence etched into the metal: "When the sky burns again, awaken the Republic." What sky? What fire? What awakening? And who wrote English thousands of years before England existed? In 1937, an antique map dealer in Boston purchased a box of old maritime documents from a private seller. Inside was a hand-drawn map on vellum showing the entire North American continent, with coastlines thousands of years older than any known chart, mountain ranges shaped differently, rivers flowing where none exist today. But the most shocking detail? A city marked at the very center of the continent. One word: Aurelon. The map was carbon dated twice. The results were impossible. It was over 9,000 years old and written with ink not found anywhere in the known world. The government confiscated it within hours. In 1952, Dr. Harrison Cole, a young archaeologist from Chicago, risked his career by leaking a single page of the manuscript to the press. The reactions were mixed. Some believed him. Most mocked him. The government threatened him. He disappeared 3 weeks later. No body, no trace, no explanation. But before he vanished, he mailed a final letter to a colleague. Inside was a translation of a paragraph from the manuscript. "We built light from sound. We shaped metal with wind. We guarded the earth against the sky. And when the sky turned on us, we erased ourselves from memory so our children would not repeat our sins." What sins? What sky? And why erase a civilization more advanced than anything their time should allow? When Apollo 12 astronauts returned from the moon, one photograph NASA refused to release showed a geometric symbol etched into a basalt formation, a symbol identical to one found in the San Francisco manuscript. NASA insisted it was a camera glitch, but the astronauts knew what they saw, and so did the linguists. All of it stored in a vault 3 levels below the National Archives. Only 19 people on Earth had clearance. One of them, an archivist named Leonard Briggs, quietly made copies. He was never called, because Briggs vanished in 1992. The only thing he left behind was a note. They knew the cycle would repeat. They left warnings everywhere, and we are ignoring all of it. In winter 1994, in a remote part of Nevada near the Sheldon Wildlife Refuge, an elderly rancher named Miles Donovan woke before dawn because the ground beneath his house was humming. Not shaking, not rumbling, humming. A low-frequency vibration, like a distant engine, buried Miles beneath the desert. Miles lived alone, surrounded by 70 acres of dust, sagebrush, and sky. He'd heard coyotes, quakes, storms, thunder, and military jets, but never this. At 3:17 a.m., he stepped outside with a lantern and felt the vibration through the soil. The cold air tasted metallic. His cow, always calm, stood perfectly still, ears raised, staring toward the northern ridge. Miles followed that eerie hum toward the hills until he saw something glowing faintly beneath the sand. A line, a seam, a perfect circle 30 feet wide, glowing like heated steel. He knelt and brushed the sand away. What he uncovered should not have existed. A metal disc, smooth as glass, yet stronger than iron, half buried in the desert floor. Engravings circled its edge, the same symbols the government had sealed away decades earlier. Unmistakable. One symbol repeated over and over. December 21st, 2012. Most people remember it as a joke. The Mayan apocalypse, memes, panic headlines, and bad television specials. But in a small underground monitoring station near Duluth, Minnesota, 3 scientists watched something far from humorous unfold on their seismic screens. At 11:11 p.m., the Earth beneath North America emitted a pulse. Not a tremor, not a quake, a pulse. A shock wave that traveled not outward, but downward, toward the ancient bedrock of the continent. Instruments registered a momentary spike in gravity, a shift so slight it defied existing physics. The senior scientist, Dr. Avery Holt, stared at the screen in disbelief. "That isn't tectonic," she whispered. "That's structured." Within seconds, monitors lit up with alerts from around the country. A harmonic tone in the Black Hills, a burst of static across Appalachian radio towers, a luminous veil rising briefly over the painted desert, migratory birds in Ontario forming a perfect circle over the highlands, the Wasatch Range producing magnetic interference strong enough to cut cell signals, a faint aurora flickering above the Wichita Mountains, and small tremors beneath the Ozarks, none strong enough to cause damage, but too rhythmic to be natural. All 7 pillars responding, simultaneously. Dr. Holt dialed the emergency line for the Department of Continental Anomalies. Before she could finish the call, the station lights went out. Total darkness. A low hum vibrated through the concrete floor. Deep, resonant, familiar. The same hum Miles Donovan had heard in 1994. The same hum recorded beneath Lake Superior. The continent itself was waking, and the cycle had begun. Part 19. The Earthquake That Wasn't an Earthquake. On January 4, 2013, residents of Memphis, Tennessee woke at 3:59 a.m. to a violent rumbling that shook windows and rattled dishes. But no seismic event was recorded, not by USGS, not by local sensors, not by any known instrument. Yet tens of thousands felt it. People described a deep vibration rising from underground, a low metallic ringing in the air, a brief blue flash under the soil, animals panicking hours beforehand, and an eerie silence afterward. No birds, no insects, nothing. A truck driver swore he saw the asphalt ripple like water. A grandmother living near the river claimed the Mississippi glowed from underneath for 3 seconds. The most disturbing report came from a child. "I heard the ground breathing." Experts dismissed the event as mass hysteria, but the DCA classified it as a localized resonance surge. Nora Briggs recognized it instantly. The Tennessee Resonance Point, one of the 7 pillars, had activated. Eleanor Whitfield had warned in her translations, "The pillars will stagger awake. Each awakening will shake the land, not in chaos, but in memory." Memory of what? A previous collapse? A previous cycle of fire? Nora's hands shook as she traced the activation pattern on her map. Tennessee was number 4. 3 had awakened before. Only 3 remained. When all 7 were active, Aurelon would return. Part 20. The Race to Find Aurelon. By mid-2013, Nora Briggs realized she wasn't the only one tracking the ancient signals. Someone else was following her movements. Someone with access to the same classified information her father once held. It started with a postcard slipped under her apartment door. "Stop looking for what wants to be found." Then her emails began disappearing. Then her father's old storage locker was emptied. Then a quiet black SUV followed her for 3 days. Nora fled Washington, D.C. with only her father's notes, a copy of the holographic map, a flash drive containing the Great Lakes anomaly, and Eleanor Whitfield's final translation. She drove west, planning to reach the Black Hills resonance point. But halfway through Nebraska, a storm forced her to stop. That night, someone tapped on her motel door. A voice whispered, "Nora Briggs, open the door. I worked with your father." She froze. No one had spoken her name in 400 miles. The voice continued. He knew they'd come for him. He knew the Republic was waking. And he knew you would be the one to finish what he started. Nora stepped back, heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked. A silence. Then a soft answer. "Someone who saw Aurelon once and survived." Nora opened the door an inch. Standing outside was a man in his late 50s, wearing a worn leather coat and a look of deep fear. "My name is Samuel Huxley," he said. "What do you want?" she asked. "To make sure you get to Aurelon before they do." "Who are they?" He looked down the hall as if expecting shadows to move. "The Silent Directorate." Part 21. The Network Below the Mississippi. Samuel Huxley once worked as a geospatial analyst for the Army Corps of Engineers in the late 1980s. His job was simple on paper: study subsurface imaging along the Mississippi. What he discovered was not simple. In 1987, just south of Cairo, Illinois, his scans revealed a vast chamber beneath the river, too symmetrical, too geometric, too perfect. He presented the data to his superiors. Within 24 hours, his project was seized by the DCA. Within 48 hours, 2 agents arrived with warnings. "You discovered a structure not meant to be rediscovered." But Samuel had already copied the files. He showed Nora his printouts. Octagonal chambers, interconnected tunnels, conduits, the same architecture as the Great Lakes Heart Chamber. This wasn't a single structure. It was a continental network, a grid of ancient technology spanning thousands of miles. Aurelon wasn't just a lost city. It was the central node of a system older than recorded history. Samuel pointed to a diagram in Nora's notes. When the 7 pillars activate, the heart chamber awakens, and when the heart awakens, the path to Aurelon opens. Nora swallowed hard. "How much time do we have?" Samuel exhaled. "Not much. Pillar 6 activated last week." Nora stared at him. "Which one?" "The Wichita Mountains." That left only one remaining. The Black Hills. The key. The final lock, the beginning of the end. Part 22, the first opening. June 9th, 2014, the day the Black Hills hummed. It began at 4:03 a.m. when the ground beneath Bear Butte shimmered faintly, as though moonlight were leaking through stone. Tourists captured shaky videos, a pale blue glow radiating from the earth, a deep resonant tone vibrating through the hills, mist rising in spirals from cracks in the ground, and a sudden burst of light shooting upward, identical to the Nevada Beacon event in 1994. The DCA locked down the area within hours, but it was too late, because something opened. Not a door, not a tunnel. A rift, a shimmering vertical slit in the air, like reality bending inward. It lasted only 13 seconds, but Nora and Samuel watched the footage frame by frame on Samuel's laptop, and in one single frame, at the height of the light, something appeared inside the rift. A shape, a silhouette, a structure. Impossible, colossal, geometric. A city, buried for millennia, calling out like a heartbeat. Aurelon. The Republic was waking, and the world was running out of time. Yet dawn in the Dakota Badlands carried an eerie stillness that morning, a silence so complete it felt engineered. Dr. Eleanor
The holographic coastline shimmered within the stone ring like a mirage suspended in reality. Waves rolling in slow arcs, clouds drifting across a pale blue sky. And behind them all, dark metallic spires rising like the ribs of some ancient colossus half buried in time. The image wasn't static. It breathed, it moved, it responded. Eleanor stepped closer, her breath shallow. "Is it a recording?" Marcus whispered. "No," Eleanor said. "Look, the shadows. They're changing with our light sources." The projection was reacting to them, not simply replaying, it was live. A second vibration spread through the floor, slower, deeper, like the steady pulse of something colossal beneath the earth. The hologram flickered. A new shape appeared on the coastline, tall, almost humanoid, but too distorted to identify. It seemed carved from the same metal as the towering structures behind it. It moved with deliberate steps toward the water. "What is that?" a student whispered. Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't know. The figure reached the shoreline and stopped. Its head, elongated, angular, turned sharply toward them, as if sensing the connection. Marcus's voice cracked. "It's looking at us!" Before Eleanor could speak, the hologram rippled like disturbed water. The coastline flickered, split, and broke into cascading patterns. The image destabilized, symbols flashing rapidly across the ring. "It's communicating," Eleanor breathed, "or trying to." The chamber lights flickered violently, and the projection collapsed into a storm of geometric fragments. Only one thing remained stable: a single glowing symbol on the stone ring's surface. Eleanor stepped closer, tracing its shape in the air. "It's the same symbol from the ledger, the one the Smithsonian erased from their archives, the one that marked the breach." "The breach?" Marcus frowned. Eleanor nodded slowly. "The last time this continent was accessed." The floor trembled again, stronger this time. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The ring pulsed once, twice, like a living heart. Then the symbol on the stone ring shifted. It began cycling through a new sequence, slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Marcus raised his scanner instinctively. "It's a numerical pattern, repeating every 13 seconds. 13, Eleanor murmured. "That number again." He looked at her.
You think this is a countdown? Eleanor didn't reply immediately. She watched the ring pulse with slow, ominous precision. The vibration in the chamber grew stronger. The sequence repeated. Then, abruptly, the stone ring projected a second image. This one was darker, grainier, a night vision perspective, not of the hidden coastline, but of the Badlands themselves, viewed from above. Eleanor's stomach tightened. "That's us," Marcus whispered. The projection zoomed in, slowly, methodically. Their campsite, their tents, the ridge tower, the tunnel entrance, everything. A cold shiver crawled up Eleanor's spine. "It's mapping us," she said softly. "Why?" Marcus breathed, but Eleanor already knew. "It's preparing," she whispered, "preparing to open something on this side." A sudden alarm blared from the ridgeline outside, high-pitched, urgent, the outer perimeter sensors. Marcus sprinted toward the tunnel mouth. "Stay here!" Eleanor shouted, but he was already gone. Eleanor turned back to the ring. The projection recalibrated again, zooming in on a location 2 miles north, flat ground, no structures, no history. A point on the earth glowed bright white. Then the ground in the hologram began to shift, split, rise. A ring-shaped structure, identical to the one they stood before, began forcing itself upward from beneath the soil, pushing through layers of earth, rock, and ancient sediment, as if breaking the surface after millennia submerged. Eleanor's heart pounded. "Oh, God," she whispered, "it's building a doorway. A real one, not a projection, not a symbol, a gateway on American soil for something to come through." Suddenly, Marcus's voice echoed down the tunnel, raw, breathless, panicked. "Eleanor, you need to get out here now!" She ran, boots echoing against the smooth stone. As she emerged from the tunnel, wind tore at her coat. The air tasted charged, metallic, like an incoming storm with no clouds. Marcus pointed upward, his face pale as bone. Eleanor followed his gaze, and her breath vanished. Above the Badlands, the sky had fractured. Not visibly, not like cracks in glass, but in ripples, distortions, shimmering waves that bent starlight and stretched the moon into elongated streaks. A shimmer, a distortion, a tear. Eleanor stared, horror spreading through her chest. "No," she whispered, "not this fast. It wasn't supposed to open this fast." Marcus turned to her, voice trembling. "What is that?" Eleanor swallowed hard. "The boundary," she said. "The one that kept the hidden continent sealed." He stared at the sky. "It's dissolving." "No," Eleanor said quietly. "It's being unlocked." Behind them, the ground shook violently. A roar, deep, tundrous, rolled across the plains. From the north, a pillar of pale blue light shot into the sky, erupting from the location the projection had shown moments earlier. The gateway had activated. Eleanor felt her knees weaken. This wasn't discovery. This wasn't archaeology. This wasn't history. This was the return of a civilization older than recorded human time. And whatever was coming through that gateway was already on its way. The blue pillar rising from the northern plains tore through the night like a spear of cold fire. It wasn't light in the normal sense. This was structured, geometric, pulsing in precise intervals that made Eleanor's chest tighten each time the rhythm hit. It wasn't random. It was language, a signal, a summoning. Wind whipped across the Badlands, pulling dust and grit into spiraling columns. The ground rumbled beneath their feet, steady, rhythmic, alive. Marcus steadied himself against a boulder. "Eleanor, this isn't just an activation. It's a beacon." Eleanor didn't respond.
Her eyes were locked on the horizon, where the beam of light struck the sky and burst outward in an expanding disk of shimmering distortion, like ripples spreading across the surface of a pond, but the pond was the atmosphere itself. The shimmering disk expanded, turning the stars behind it into twisted streaks. "Dr. Hayes," Larson called out from the ridge tower, "we're picking up something else. Dozens of spikes on thermal, magnetic, everything. It's coming from underground. No, under the entire region." The earth shook again, stronger this time. Eleanor staggered, but kept her eyes fixed on the glowing horizon. Then, from the direction of the blue pillar, a second sound rolled across the plains. A hum, deep, resonant, harmonic. It wasn't like the earlier vibrations. This was deliberate, musical, a tone that resonated in Eleanor's bones, in her teeth, in the hollow places of her skull. "Marcus, you think that's a key?" The sky above the pillar rippled once more, then tore open. A thin line of pure darkness split horizontally across the shimmering disk, widening like an iris. Not black like night sky, black like absence, like the void between stars. Eleanor's breath hitched. "That's not a portal," she whispered. "That's atmosphere displacement." "Meaning?" Marcus asked. "Meaning. Something on the other side is pushing through." The line widened, exposing a vast interior glow, pale, silver blue, pulsing like the surface of a star seen through water. Lightning like arcs traced along the edges of the rift, sparking downward into the plains. And then they saw movement. Shadows. 3, 4, no more. More than Eleanor could count. Enormous shapes drifting within the rift's interior glow, silhouetted against the pale light. Some tall and thin, some wide and angular, all of them massive. They moved with slow, precise deliberation, like creatures or machines, adjusting to pressure before emerging into a new world. "What the hell are those?" Larson whispered from behind them. Marcus leaned closer. "They look like structures." "No," Eleanor said under her breath. "They're living. Look at the joints, the articulation." One of the shapes stepped toward the opening. A massive limb extended forward, its surface shimmering like polished obsidian, segmented with glowing lines that shifted color with each motion. It pushed against the boundary of the rift, testing it. The rift crackled violently, but held. Another shape moved behind it, this one small.
Eleanor's chest constricted, but she forced herself to stand straight, her fingers tightening around the strap of the satchel. The figure's voice, metallic, layered, almost harmonic, resonated in her mind as well as in the fog around them. "You do not understand what you are holding," it said, each word pulsing like a vibration through her skull. "It is not a map, it is a key, and you are the last to carry it." Eleanor's breath caught. I don't know what you mean. I'm just trying to understand." The figure took a slow step forward. Its eyes gleamed like twin sapphires, reflecting the faint glow of the sphere inside the arch. "You understand more than you realize. Your ancestors carried the knowledge, encoded in your blood. The ledger, the stone rings, all of it was preserved for this moment. You have awakened what was sleeping." Grant stepped beside her, shaking. "Eleanor, what is it talking about?" The figure ignored him. "The boundaries are failing. The continent you call hidden is no longer beneath the waves. It is re-emerging, and with it, the civilization that built it. You cannot stop it. You can only guide it, or be swept aside." Eleanor's felt an almost physical pull toward the glowing sphere inside the arch. Her hands moved on their own, guided by instinct rather than thought. The map in her satchel vibrated, resonating with the sphere. The lines etched in the obsidian tablet glowed faintly, aligning with the symbols on the arch. The figure raised both arms. The fog twisted, forming concentric rings around them, spiraling inward with impossible precision. A humming filled the air, not just around them, but inside them, inside Eleanor. Her mind was flooded with visions, continents shifting, cities rising from the depths, strange machines powered by energy she could not comprehend, and humans, ancient humans, walking alongside beings taller, stronger, almost godlike in stature. "The last awakening will not wait," it said, its voice calm now, almost mournful. "If you fail, the world as you know it will collapse under the weight of what comes. If you succeed, you may live to see a new dawn." Eleanor's eyes widened. "You mean Aurelon?" The figure inclined its head. "Yes, the hidden republic, the city beneath the waves, the continent lost to memory. It is alive again, and it remembers its children." Grant grabbed her arm. "Eleanor, we can't just walk in there. We don't know what's waiting." She looked at him, then back at the glowing sphere. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to leave the mountains forever. But something deeper, ancestral, primal, urgent, pushed her forward. The figure stepped aside. The fog twisted once more. The archway pulsed, and for the first time in millennia, a pathway into the hidden continent opened fully. Eleanor swallowed hard and stepped forward. Her fingers brushed the surface of the glowing sphere. The moment she did, the world around her fractured. The fog shattered. The forest dissolved into a haze of light, and a new landscape emerged. A land untouched by time. Cities of impossible architecture rose above vast plains, metallic towers and crystalline spires glinting under a strange, pale sun. Rivers shimmered with liquid that reflected more than light, memories, perhaps, of civilizations long past. And in the skies above, massive construct floated, suspended as if gravity itself bent to their will. Eleanor turned to Grant. His eyes mirrored her awe, fear, and disbelief. "They're alive," he whispered. "Everything here is alive, and it's waiting for us to choose what comes next." The figure's voice echoed around them, now coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome, last heir. The continent remembers you, and it will not wait for another." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Oh, what do you mean? I'm just trying to understand." The figure took a slow step forward. Its eyes gleamed like twin sapphires, reflecting the faint glow of the sphere inside the arch. "You understand more than you realize. Your ancestors carried the knowledge, encoded in your blood. The ledger, the stone rings, all of it was preserved for this moment. You have awakened what was sleeping." Grant stepped beside her, shaking. "Eleanor, what is it talking about?" The figure ignored him. "The boundaries are failing. The continent you call hidden is no longer beneath the waves. It is re-emerging, and with it, the civilization that built it. You cannot stop it. You can only guide it, or be swept aside." Eleanor's felt an almost physical pull toward the glowing sphere inside the arch. Her hands moved on their own, guided by instinct rather than thought. The map in her satchel vibrated, resonating with the sphere. The lines etched in the obsidian tablet glowed faintly, aligning with the symbols on the arch. The figure raised both arms. The fog twisted, forming concentric rings around them, spiraling inward with impossible precision. A humming filled the air, not just around them, but inside them, inside Eleanor. Her mind was flooded with visions, continents shifting, cities rising from the depths, strange machines powered by energy she could not comprehend, and humans, ancient humans, walking alongside beings taller, stronger, almost godlike in stature. "The last awakening will not wait," it said, its voice calm now, almost mournful. "If you fail, the world as you know it will collapse under the weight of what comes. If you succeed, you may live to see a new dawn." Eleanor's eyes widened. "You mean Aurelon?" The figure inclined its head. "Yes, the hidden republic, the city beneath the waves, the continent lost to memory. It is alive again, and it remembers its children." Grant grabbed her arm. "Eleanor, we can't just walk in there. We don't know what's waiting." She looked at him, then back at the glowing sphere. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to leave the mountains forever. But something deeper, ancestral, primal, urgent, pushed her forward. The figure stepped aside. The fog twisted once more. The archway pulsed, and for the first time in millennia, a pathway into the hidden continent opened fully. Eleanor swallowed hard and stepped forward. Her fingers brushed the surface of the glowing sphere. The moment she did, the world around her fractured. The fog shattered. The forest dissolved into a haze of light, and a new landscape emerged. A land untouched by time. Cities of impossible architecture rose above vast plains, metallic towers and crystalline spires glinting under a strange pale sun. Rivers shimmered with liquid that reflected more than light, memories, perhaps, of civilizations long past. And in the skies above, massive constructs floated, suspended as if gravity itself bent to their will. Eleanor turned to Grant. His eyes mirrored her awe, fear, and disbelief. "They're alive," he whispered. "Everything here is alive, and it's waiting for us to choose what comes next." The figure's voice echoed around them, now coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome, last heir. The continent remembers you, and it will not wait for another." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Oh, what do you mean? I'm just trying to understand." The figure took a slow step forward. Its eyes gleamed like twin sapphires, reflecting the faint glow of the sphere inside the arch. "You understand more than you realize. Your ancestors carried the knowledge, encoded in your blood. The ledger, the stone rings, all of it was preserved for this moment. You have awakened what was sleeping." Grant stepped beside her, shaking. "Eleanor, what is it talking about?" The figure ignored him. "The boundaries are failing. The continent you call hidden is no longer beneath the waves. It is re-emerging, and with it, the civilization that built it. You cannot stop it. You can only guide it, or be swept aside." Eleanor's felt an almost physical pull toward the glowing sphere inside the arch. Her hands moved on their own, guided by instinct rather than thought. The map in her satchel vibrated, resonating with the sphere. The lines etched in the obsidian tablet glowed faintly, aligning with the symbols on the arch. The figure raised both arms. The fog twisted, forming